All right, and we're back. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, talking day one of South Carolina football. Obviously, here on Tuesday, South Carolina reported to practice or reported to camp, you could say, on Monday. And then here we are on Tuesday with South Carolina having their first practice. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the details we're already learning. And it's been a busy day in general, busy day on GamecockCentral.com. And we've had some recruiting news, which we're going to talk about a little bit, but mainly going to talk football, Chris. And, it was weird, I will say, not being out there. I think at the same time, I'll give them credit. South Carolina, Steve Fink, the guys with the media team over there, Steve Fink, South Carolina's SID, did a really good job, I think, of getting us some notes, sending a ton of photos, which you can see on GamecockCentral.com right now for free, whether you're a subscriber or not. But yeah, man, I think even though we weren't out there, even though we didn't get to smell the grass, which is what Muschamp and Helinski have both, been quoted as saying, it actually felt like football was here yesterday and today, and hopefully we can continue that momentum a little bit on GamecockCentral.com as well.
Yeah, man, that was good. I did think that they did, those guys in the athletics media relations office did a really good job. Like you said, getting the photos over, throwing out some notes. They interviewed a couple of the players, and obviously we all know, man, that this preseason and even this season is going to be different from a media availability standpoint. The cool thing about our medium, just as an aside, is we're still going to be able to do plenty, in terms of analysis and what we hear behind the scenes in recruiting. There's still going to be tons to talk about, as there has been, even with no practice, no live sports. We were still pretty busy, Wes, and we still had a lot of stuff to talk about. And now that that practice has reopened again, that's really going to ramp up. It has been a busy day with recruiting stuff, with football stuff. So, a few nothing groundbreaking happened, but just getting a chance to sort of there's been a lot of virtual stuff going on. We sort of virtually got an updated look at some of the players, some of the newcomers, some of the guys that have been on the roster, got to hear from them virtually, and just sort of couple that with some of the other things that we've been hearing. So it was a unique start. It was a different start to preseason camp, but nonetheless was I still think pretty exciting, and hopefully it is for the fans as well.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, man, we're going to have plenty to talk about. And I want to start with a guy, and this is not a humble brag for Gamecock Central, but I will say it is one of my favorite things in the world when we start talking about something on the Insider Forum, and then a few days later or a week later or something like that, people get to hear it confirmed by a player or by a coach or by Will Muschamp a lot of times. So because I think that's one of the things, not to sell everybody on Gamecock Central, that's one of the values we try to provide to the fan base and that we enjoy bringing to the fan base. So I want to start with Rico Powers, who's someone we first started hearing some buzz about, about 15, 16 days ago. Muschamp mentioned him among the guys at receiver who he was feeling good about. And then today in the video that Steve Fink did with Ryan Helinski, I'm going to play it for you right now. You can hear about some of the standouts that Helinski has noticed just so far in the OTAs and then in practice today.
Rico Powers has been one of those guys that has been really good for us. He came in, and before he even came in, he was texting me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times he DM'd me asking for playbook installs, stuff he can get started on before he even got here. And then he gets here, and he just keeps getting better every single day, which is really cool. Marshawn Lloyd's another guy, that just keeps getting better. Some of the runs I see today, I'll hand it off, I'll turn around, it's supposed to hit to the left, he might bounce it back all the way to the right, and there's nobody there, and it's just like, can somebody do that? But those two guys have been really good for us. Nick Muse is coming back with his knee, which is really good to see. Josh Vann is finally, coming back to full go. He's been really good, improving. Shi Smith, of course, and Takarian Joyner is going to be really good for us. He's been moving a lot. He's been doing what he can do for the team, and he's doing it at the highest level right now. So all those guys have been really good, and we got a bunch of other guys coming with him.
So there you see Helinski talking about some of the guys, talking about Marshawn Lloyd, who, no surprise there at all, Chris. We all have heard about Marshawn Lloyd all offseason, but Powers was not an early enrollee, wasn't here in the spring, but it sounds like he's been able to get settled. He's able to get open. Coach Muschamp talked about just his ability at the top of routes to finish routes, to get open, to make some plays. And then you hear, your quarterback talking about him as well. So I think this is probably the biggest positive surprise. Maybe not even surprise, but just positive development for South Carolina at this point in camp, because we know that position is a need. And we're not here to completely overhype him, but if he can come in and help, I had someone else yesterday tied in with the program mention Powers to me as being someone to watch, Chris. So I think we can officially put Rico Powers, I think, as someone we're going to hear a lot about. I almost guarantee when the players talk for the first time, when the defensive guys talk for the first time, and they are asked, hey, who's standing out on offense? Who's a newcomer you've noticed? They're going to mention Marshawn Lloyd. We all know that. But I almost guarantee at this point we're going to hear more and more about Rico Powers.
Yeah, man, and you're exactly right. I mean, anyone that can help us, particularly that receiver position, it's a guy that's going to get a heavy look, whether it's guys already on the roster, whether it's newcomers. We knew based on Rico Powers' senior tape in particular, he really seemed to take a step forward. Like from the summer going into his senior year when he camped at South Carolina, turned in a really good performance. His senior year playing in that different offense at Hapeville Charter that really sort of accentuated his strengths. He really did a great job and really seemed to sort of come into his own. And he's carried that over. Ryan Helinski, like you said, raved about him today in terms of just being in the playbook, even before he got to South Carolina. And he seemed to sort of hit the ground running. Athletically, he's a guy that can do a lot for you. There's been a comparison that, several people have made looking at the film of Pharaoh Cooper, just sort of a unique type of running style. And if he could be, I don't know, half, three-quarters the player that Pharaoh Cooper was for South Carolina, that would be something. And so you don't want to set the bar too high. Still a steep learning curve. When the pads come on, that's still going to be something pretty significant for Powers when you get into live game situations. But I think it's really a positive for South Carolina that his name has come up a lot because they do need help at receiver. And I think that he's a guy that early on they're sort of eyeing as someone who is going to have a chance to help this team this year.
Yeah, and again, that's something that's absolutely needed. And we're going to sort of go back a little bit to yesterday when Muschamp talked, because it's in the same category of who can help at wide receiver. And Jalen Brooks, I think, Chris, is someone that we had wondered if he can get his waiver from the NCAA, which we know is always going to be a wait and see. You never know how those things are going to turn out. But I think the early indications, and I'm going to play this clip real quick. We sort of spliced together I think Muschamp talked about him 3 times yesterday. So here's a quick clip, Muschamp on Jalen Brooks.
We added Jalen Brooks to our roster. We're putting a waiver together for the NCAA for immediate eligibility. Appreciate Coach Seidel Blythewood, who coached him at Hickory Ridge in Charlotte, and his help. As far as those things are concerned, relationships are so key in recruiting, and certainly he helped us a lot. In the short time we've been with him, he runs around extremely well. He's a big physical guy. He's very intelligent. He learns extremely well. So in a very short time, he's made a very favorable impression on our staff. But again, with those waivers, Colin, you never know. You never know exactly when, they'll I'm sure that there's, because of what we're going through, there's a lot out there. There's a lot on the NCAA's plate right now. We do feel good about some family situations that we feel like are real. And that we feel that he should be ruled in favorably to play this year. Jalen, he has grown a lot since he played in high school as far as his body is concerned. So his body's changed tremendously. We know some people that he throws with that all reached out to us and talked about his work ethic, his athleticism, his hand-eye coordination, his ball skills. And his tape is really impressive. And is a position that we need some more productive guys and some more dependable guys at the position. So we continued to research him. We were extremely impressed with what we saw, and we felt like he can be a huge contributor to us.
Yeah, as you see there, Chris, early indications are, I think when you hear Muschamp's quote, your first thought is that it's confirmed that he's an SEC athlete. Yeah. Muschamp knows what an SEC athlete looks like. Talked about his size, his speed. We knew about the work ethic, but there's always going to be that jump. So the fact that they're saying that right off the bat, hey, strong, early, positive impression, I think is a really good sign for South Carolina. The key, obviously, get the waiver. Who knows? We're going to get asked multiple times, when will the waiver When will they have word on the waiver? No one is going to know. If you had Will Muschamp sitting at the bar drinking a beer, giving you an absolute 100% honest, non-coach speak answer, he still couldn't give you an actual answer because you never know with the NCAA. But I think let's put that part aside. Good early, I think, thoughts from Muschamp there. It's a positive sign.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off there. Just going back to what you said about the waiver, I mean, man, the Nick Muse situation last year. I mean, it's after the first game for no apparent reason. So you really never know. And you feel good about the case. Muschamp mentioned that. We've heard some things that would seem to indicate that he's probably going to have a good shot. But that said, there have been other folks who've had good reasons seemingly that have been denied as well. So you never know. But if they could get him, that'd be a significant boost because at the minimum, based on early returns, got to get the pads on and everything. Brooks does have some college experience, albeit smaller level, to fall back on in terms of a proven track school. And so that certainly helps when you're projecting him. But he's a guy that's going to be able to help somehow. Again, we mentioned earlier with Powers, with guys on the current roster. They have got to have somebody, multiple people, step forward to provide depth, to push some starters, maybe to grab a starting spot because one or two of those may be open as well. And so certainly he's a guy that, when you look at him with his size, his length, his competitiveness, his ability to run, and some ball skills, he sort of has that formula. And so that'd be huge for South Carolina if they can get him eligible, if he can continue to progress. And it'll be interesting to see what we hear as practice goes on in terms of how he's acclimating.
Yeah, South Carolina also announcing today that he'll be wearing number 81. That was in their notes that they gave out after practice. And not really a whole lot else from those notes, Chris. I did think it was interesting. Maybe just a completely forgotten note that people will probably gloss over would be that Sean Mcgonicle, who is a guy that I was familiar with when he was at Myrtle Beach, basically has moved to fullback now. And a lot of people will probably not remember that at Myrtle Beach, Sean was a standout defensive end. Actually, he and Damani Staley went back and forth for the state lead in sacks when they were seniors. And Sean Jr. has played some linebacker at South Carolina, has played some buck, now playing fullback. I think fullback, Chris, is one of those positions. We know Adam Prentice is going to be the starter. I think that's probably pretty set in stone. But that is a position where it's much more about having an old school mindset, being a big, strong, tough kid, which I can tell you Sean Mcgonicle Jr. absolutely is. So, I think that's maybe something that will get glossed over, but something that is worth at least mentioning as being someone who could sort of step in maybe as the number 2 fullback.
For sure. And maybe the type of guy that you could look at as a special teams contributor as well. Again, that's another key area for South Carolina with this schedule, with the margin for error that they're going to have this season, which isn't high. It's not really high for any team, but particularly them this year, heading into a conference-only slate. You're going to need to be good in all areas. We've talked a lot about the offensive improvements that's needed, but they've got some questions on special teams too. You replace a punter. You got to look at some different things there in terms of returners, in terms of maybe replacing some personnel that helped you in the past on special teams. And so when you look at guys like, reserve fullbacks, reserve tight ends, these are the type of the guys that you start thinking about where they can be slotted on special teams too. Now you'll have starters at other positions for sure, but with his sort of versatility and his football mindset and mentality, I think he could be a guy that could help this football team somehow. You're right.
Yeah, so as far as the notes, not a whole lot else. We did get some pictures. That's one thing we did miss. Honestly, guys, when we're out there at practice, and these days you're able to watch the first 3, segments of practice. Flex and 3 is basically what it is. You're not seeing depth charts. You're not seeing actual plays anyway. But the one thing we did miss out on, I would say, this year is just getting a look. Okay, who looks bigger? Who looks more fit? People always want to hear about the true freshman. What did the true freshman look like? At least with the media team from South Carolina sending out some pictures. We have those photos up on Gamecock Central. And at least with that, we did get a look at some guys and someone I know everyone wanted to see, and someone that Muschamp, as you mentioned before we sort of started recording here, Chris, Muschamp did have some positive things to say about Jordan Birch yesterday. So I think that's got to be a good sign and something South Carolina fans wanted to hear.
Yeah, and I mean, it certainly looks the part. You know, when you look at the pictures, doesn't look a whole lot different to me from he did in high school, which he looked like a really, really good prospect when you just looked at him physically, and then you looked at him move around on the football field or on the basketball court where he also played. There was a ton to like there, and so I think just looking at him in the pictures, stacking up against other guys on the roster, he already looks like one of the more impressive guys. And it's not a surprise. I mean, this is a 5-star kid and one of the top defensive ends in the country, one of the top players overall in the country as a prospect. So certainly a lot of eyes on him, a lot of questions about his capacity to contribute. And I think it's there. I think it's open with DJ Wanham rolling off the roster with some questions at Buck. Do you move, JJ Enagbare? Can he factor in there? Muschamp has said yes. Brad Johnson's there. Rod Fitton. But the potential is there to add another pass rusher. And Muschamp mentioned, how bright Birch is, how much of a competitor he is, and they've seemed to be impressed with him in the early going, which is certainly good because they could use another guy as a pass rusher.
Yeah, and I will say something, Chris, that I think maybe caught my attention as just a tiny tidbit was when Keir Thomas talked, and he was talking about the guys in his room. He talked about some of the other players at his position. He pretty much 100% talked about interior guys. So I think one thing we were wondering moving forward was going to be, okay, as they start moving kids around, JJ Enagbare, like you said, he could play some Buck. I think right now that's probably the most likely scenario is you get Enagbare and Sterling on the field at the same time. Then, okay, is Keir Thomas more of a defensive end? Is he more of a defensive tackle? He's played both. Sometimes it's dependent on the matchup. Sometimes, Chris, let's be honest, sometimes it's dependent on injuries and basically where South Carolina was forced to play him. So from the sounds of it, it sounds like the hope is that he's maybe more of an interior guy. We're reading between the lines a little bit there, but right now that's what we do. That's like sort of our job right now is to read through the lines. So I think that was one other thing that I sort of gleaned from that. Also today, like we said, we teased it, a little bit of recruiting stuff. And Chris, we'll let everybody go check out the content on Gamecock Central. And a lot of this stuff is actually available to anyone free right now. But Gunnar Stockton, who it was interesting, Chris. I wondered how highly ranked he was going to be. We knew he was going to be very highly ranked, but just how highly ranked. And from what our Rivals National guys are saying right now, Gunnar Stockton, of course, elite quarterback, South Carolina and Georgia Final Two. And he's going to be in the running, it sounds like, for the top quarterback honors.
Yeah, pretty close. Right now, I think right behind Quinn Ewers from Texas, who is committed to Texas, and Stockton right there, very, very close to 5-star status. And, of course, this is the first batch of rankings for 2022, so still time to be adjusted. But it's a guy that's been on the radar for a long time. And interview with him on the front page of GamecockCentral.com where he talks about South Carolina and what he likes about it, obviously with ties to Mike Bobo, ties to the Shaw family, Connor Shaw, with Connor's brother. Mike Bobo's father, there's just a lot of connections there, long-standing, that really have South Carolina in the race, and the staff with Mike Bobo is a huge, huge part of that. So interesting stuff. We also have an insider report, which is for subscribers, that dives a little bit more into Stockton's recruitment, and a couple interesting parallel there with another really, really big-time quarterback who considered Georgia and a school from the Palmetto State a couple of cycles ago. It's interesting how the timing's lining up, and we'll have to see if South Carolina can do a similar thing and land a big-time dude out of Georgia for the 2022 class, and that'd be a big-time acquisition. So no real timeline there, but Gamecocks heavily in the mix for one of the most talented prospects in that class already.
Yeah, and the other part of that, Chris, is that South Carolina hopes that if it does turn out like that they get some of the same results that other school you're talking about got there as well. So some good stuff there, and someone I think obviously that people are going to see the more they hear from Gunnar Stockton because he doesn't talk a whole lot, but just seems to be a super just good, laid back, sort of sticks to himself, doesn't get into all the media, like rivals hype or anything. Is more just about, hey, I'm here to play some ball. I'm here to go fishing. I think he will. By the way, let's end this on a lighthearted note. He may have the chance. Y'all were talking. I think you and Colin were talking on Twitter about who replaces Donnell Stanley as the most impressive guy on the lake as far as fishing goes on the team. I don't think we got an answer. Do we know currently who's probably the best on the team for that? I don't know, but it sounds like Gunnar Stockton maybe could sort of replace Donnell as the best fisherman on the roster if the Gamecocks are able to add him.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an interim right now. Maybe that's another part of your recruiting pitch. Just kidding, but I don't know. Nobody has stepped forward to claim that throne, so we're still. Yeah, I mean we're open for suggestions to crown one. We know that some of the coaches on staff, I think, fancy themselves fishermen.
I think Bobby Bentley does.
Bobby Bentley definitely, I think, would proclaim himself to be
Joe Cox, maybe.
Joe Cox goes.
Mike Bobo, I think.
Mike goes. Definitely George Bobo, Mike's dad, goes all the time. And there was one other one. Well, I mean, Will Muschamp goes. So, there's a few coaches. I'm not so sure about players. And I don't know. I guess fishing is an approved activity right now. It's not boring, but Muschamp's wanting them to be boring. So I'm not sure about getting on the boat or whatever. Seems safe. But
yeah,
we need to get an answer to that. We'll have to do some digging there.
Yeah, we will. All right, so you see the graphic, 60-day free trial. If you want to read more about the Gamecocks, just come check us out. There's there's really no harm to checking it out. Use code GC60 as you see scrolling, I should say, below. And you got I don't know, man. We're gonna try to. We talk too much. I talk too much. I'll speak for myself, but we're gonna try to keep these little quick wrap ups on the week as short as possible. So. Chris, is there anything else that we need to add for now?
I think we're good, man. Appreciate everybody following GamecockCentral.com.
Yep, he's Chris. I'm Wes, and we'll see you next time.